everyone, how's it going? I have a little discussion video for you today, and this is a discussion that is kind of maybe Midrash adjacent, so I'm going to use the hashtag just for the heck of it. I hope the hosts don't mind that it's not exactly directly book related, although I am going to bring up a few books. But what I want to talk about in this video is whether or not religion is consoling. And this is an idea that I've long thought about. I've actually chatted about it with a couple of religious friends of mine, including Karen Evans in a Voxer chat, and I also briefly touched on it in a comment on one of Jason's videos. And I want to open my discussion with a quote from C.S. Lewis, and the quote is from A Grief Observed, his sort of kind of really slim memoir about the death of his wife and his dealing with his grief over that, but also as kind of an examination of faith and doubt and God and religion and so on. And this is probably my favorite quote from the book, and it's one that's always stuck with me, and I often say that it kind of haunts me a little bit, but the quote is this: "Talk to me about the truth of religion, and I'll listen gladly. Talk to me about the duty of religion, and I'll listen submissively. But don't come talking to me about the consolation of religion, or I shall suspect that you don't understand." And what I think is really, and I think that quote really gets to the heart of what I want to talk about, because there's this idea that's often touted in atheist, agnostic, non-religious in general circles that people turn to religion when they need consolation. They turn to religion because they sort of need emotional support, they can't deal with, the rips and scorns of time, so they turn to religion to help them, because religion, from this perspective, offers all of these sort of comforts, right? You get to talk to this supernatural deity, supposedly you have these angels who come to help you, you get the idea of an afterlife, although not every religion has an idea of an afterlife. For example, in Buddhism and Hinduism, you get reincarnated, and so on and so forth. But basically, they see religion as just a big set of kind of just a way to feel better. And there is research showing actually that being more religious does tend to be correlated with greater psychological well-being, with greater happiness. But a lot of that correlation probably has less to do with religion itself, and probably has a bit more to do with the fact that religion also tends to encourage communalism. You go to, for example, you go to a church on Sundays and you see friends and sometimes family and so on, and feeling connected with other people tends to be correlated with psychological well-being, among other things. But so there is this correlation between being more religious and greater psychological well-being, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you were to take a sample of non-religious people and a sample of religious people right now, today, and test them on their psychological well-being, that the religious people would inevitably score higher. I don't think that that's what that means. But anyway, from this perspective, religion is primarily about comfort. And, it, again, often comes from the perspective of non-religious people, who unwittingly, I think, most of the time, come off as rather condescending towards people who are religious. Because, the unspoken implication of what they're saying about religion is that they, the person speaking, who is usually not religious, doesn't need all of these comforts and so on. They can just deal with the world, I guess, with their own mind and so on. And so there is this unspoken arrogance or superiority behind saying it sometimes. And often, even when people do come off like that, they often don't mean to, although sometimes they do mean to, and that's kind of annoying, even for me who's not religious. But I have increasingly grown suspicious of that view of religion, because, I actually recently come to start joking with people, half joking maybe, that part of the reason I am not religious, that I choose to not be religious, to not believe in God, is because it makes life so complicated. I actually think the life of an unbeliever is actually a lot simpler than a life of a believer, because we don't have all these rules that we need to follow. We don't have, a God who we feel accountable to. We don't have all these rules. It makes me think of, for example, in Fear and Trembling by Søren Kierkegaard. He talks about when Abraham was ordered to sacrifice his own son Isaac by God himself, and almost does it. But this idea of fear and trembling is this idea that Abraham felt this fear and trembling when he was first asked by God to do this horrible thing to his own son. And Kierkegaard seems to see that as kind of a metaphor for the religious experience, of following sort of God's commandments. And it also makes me think of, in Dante's Inferno, when he's in hell and sees people being subject to all these horrific tortures, and it is overcome with dread and also sympathy for the damned, right? Especially early in the Inferno. As he gets deeper into the Inferno, he starts to find it easier not to sympathize, and one of the aspect of his sort of character arc is that he needs to get over that and stop sympathizing with the damned. But anyway, that's sort of beside the point. And I know that most even Christians or Catholics don't necessarily believe in like a hell where people are punished eternally, right? I know that. I'm sort of speaking a little bit crudely here. But still, non-religious people don't have all of these ways in which they're held accountable, They sort of have to do it themselves. And so religion is a lot about sort of anxiety and feeling held accountable. And on top of that, another unspoken assumption, I think, of people who talk about the consolations of religion is that religion is about certainty, is about knowing that God exists, about knowing that you're going to heaven, or that you're going to be reincarnated in a good life, or knowing that, that there is an order to the universe, or something like that. And, I think one of the major themes that comes out of maybe Midrash every year is that religious faith is not about really certainty. It's a lot about doubt and questioning. The way that I really see religion is as kind of a series of metaphors for talking about life, about a lot of the aspects of life that seem less material because of our tiny human brains, even though they probably are material, but the aspects of life that are just difficult to discuss in what we would call material terms. Like God is a very concrete metaphor for an experience that everyone, I think, has. The soul probably is as well, and sin is too, and so on and so forth. It is a series of concrete metaphors to talk about things that to our tiny human brains seem very abstract and difficult to pin down. And that's not to say that God or sin is easy to pin down, but still, religion provides a series of terms for talking about those things. And that's how I see religion. And so I see religion as, helpful, but not comforting per se, or consolatory, right? And so I made a video about this once, and I actually took the video down, but the reason that I often say that I choose not to be a person of faith or to believe in God is just because I personally don't find the concepts useful to myself in my own lived experience. That's often how I put it. And, again, hopefully that doesn't come off as condescending or as just sort of a second version of what I started the video criticizing, but that's how I usually put it. And yeah, so anyway, that was kind of all I wanted to say in this video, was to kind of open this question and idea of religion as consoling, and some alternatives. But I'd be curious to hear from everyone, of faith or not. And anyway, I'll leave it at that. Hope it made some sense, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye.